Okay, so next we are ready to see the ninth exercise. This one has 3 subdivisions. If the group G has 3 elements, so it must be abelian. Part B. Do part A if G has 4 elements, and part C, do part A if G has 5 elements. Okay, so let us see how a solution can be obtained. So in the first part we have a group with 3 elements. So let G be this group consisting of the 3 elements E, A and B, where according to our standard notation E is the identity and A and B are 2 elements other than the identity. Okay. So now we have to show that G is abelian. That means what? If we take arbitrary elements G and H in G, we have to prove that these two products are equal. In other words, that the elements G and H commute with each other. Now, there are some things that can be considered here. If one of the elements is the identity, say E dot H and H dot E, then by the definition of identity, both of these are equal to H. And this is actually true in any group. So when you are going to show that 2 elements commute, that is any 2 elements commute in a group, in order to show that it is abelian, it's always the case that the elements commute if at least one of them is the identity. You see here H can be anything, so H itself can also be the identity, or it may be any non-identity element also. So in our attempt to show that G is abelian, there is no need to consider the identity element. One more thing is that there is no need to consider the case where the elements are equal, because in that case these two products will actually be equal just like that. Trivially they are equal. So not considering these cases, we are left with what? In the present situation, we are left with these two things. These two products are equal, that we have to show. Now it may seem like a lot of things all of these things have to be explained, but no, these things are quite trivial and we will not even mention them in our actual solution, because you cannot hope to write a solution showing every detail, and that is because as you go to higher and higher parts of mathematics, problems will become more difficult, solutions will become more difficult, and in general will be longer. So if you have the habit of writing down everything to the last bit of detail, then the solutions will be unimaginably large. So we can suppress this type of trivial information, and we will. So instead of saying anything, we just get straight to the argument. Note that the cancellation laws imply that none of these elements A dot B and B dot A belongs to this set. Okay. Here also the justification is so easy that we will just leave it like this. However, I will show you why that is the case. If you assume that A dot B belongs to this set, then it is either A or B. If it is equal to A, then you can write A as A dot E. Then you can use the left cancellation law to cancel E from both sides to have B equal to E, which is clearly not possible because according to our description of the group, B, A, E, A and B, these are all distinct elements. A similar contradiction you will get if you assume A dot B equal to B. That after again applying the right cancellation law will give you A equal to E, which is also not possible. And a similar thing will happen with B dot A. So none of these elements belongs to this set. But because G is closed under this its own binary operation, so the elements, these products must belong to G. Since A dot B and B dot A both belong to G, the only possibility is that both of them are equal to E, and that just tells us that both of them are equal. Hence, G is abelian. That's it. That's just how you write the solution without even mentioning that we have to consider E and those things. Those are just trivial facts that anyone can understand. We are concerned about showing that non-trivial products are equal. Where you, by non-trivial, you know what we mean. Non-trivial product is one where the elements are different and none of them is the identity. Okay, next we have a group with 4 elements. Okay, so now apart from the identity E, we have 3 more elements, A, B and C. If every element of G is its own inverse, then G is abelian. Okay, if it happens that every element in G is its own inverse, we already know that the inverse of E is itself. E is its own inverse. However, that may or may not be the case with the other elements. If it happens that every element is its own inverse, then we are saying that the group is abelian. But how? That we will see in the next exercise. So this part of the solution, part B, will stay incomplete unless we state and solve the next exercise. That is fine. We can come from the from something that appears much after to something else which appears earlier in the text. The only thing is that we have to be careful that if you have a result A, suppose, and a result B, and B appears after A, you can refer to B and use it to solve A, but keep in mind the solution of B itself should not use A. This should not happen, because then you are not proving anything. You are trapped in a circular argument. and that leads you nowhere. In a logical argument or in a logical structure where there are many results, say A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever follows from whatever result, the whole structure should be a tree. In the language of graph theory, it should be a tree, it should not be a cycle, like it should not have a cycle in it, so that circularity can be avoided. Okay. So here we will just simply write see the next exercise. So that part is taken care of by the next exercise. So we now assume that G has at least one element which is not equal to its own inverse. Okay, but which one? That element definitely cannot be E, because E is its own inverse. So that element will be one among these three elements, A, B or C. So without loss of generality, we assume that to be A. We assume that A is an element whose inverse is not equal to A. But that begs the question, what is its inverse? That also we have to assume something here, no? Note that we cannot take A inverse equal to E. Why? Because if we take A inverse equal to E, then A will be equal to A inverse whole inverse, this is equal to E inverse, this is equal to E. So A and E are equal, which is not the case. So this is not possible. So that means A inverse has to be either B or C, because it cannot be equal to itself. That's what its property is. So without loss of generality, again we assume it to be equal to B. We can take it to be C also, but this is a special element. E has a special status in the group. The others are somewhat equal in status. They are just some elements which are not equal to the identity. Okay. Then A is equal to A inverse whole inverse, that is equal to B inverse, and so C is equal to C inverse. Now this part we understand, it is coming from this assumption, but why is this coming? Because of these things. Let us see. C inverse will belong to the group because it's a group. C inverse cannot be equal to E, just like how A inverse cannot be equal to E. So C inverse also is not equal to E, because otherwise we will get C equal to E. Okay, can we have C inverse equal to A? If we assume that, then just like this calculation, C will be equal to A inverse, and A inverse is B. So then we will get the false conclusion that C is equal to B. C and B are not equal. So this is also not possible. Because of a similar reason, we cannot take C inverse equal to B, because then C will be equal to B inverse and B inverse is A. So C and A would be equal, which is not possible. So the only possibility is C inverse equal to C. Here also we are not going to show these things. This follows easily from the situation. That's why we have written and so. This one is following because of these things. Now we have A inverse C. Okay. Let us first try to show that A and C commute. We have already seen that we need not consider E when we are showing that two elements commute. By the cancellation laws, C dot A and A dot C do not belong to this set. We have already seen this type of argument in the previous part, and we now know why this is the case. And there is a semicolon. Note also that C dot A and A dot C are both different from E. Why are we getting these things? You see, if we have C dot A equal to E, then you multiply both sides from the right hand side by A inverse, you will get C is equal to A inverse. That again will give you C is equal to B. A similar contradiction will appear if you assume A dot C is equal to E. So that's why both these elements are different from E, are different from A, are different from C. Okay. So they cannot be equal to E or A or C. Hence, we are forced to conclude that so if they are not E or A or C, the only possibility is that they will both be equal to A inverse. A dot C is equal to A inverse is equal to C dot A, and that's how we have shown that they commute. Okay. This implies okay, so A and C are commuting. Now next we want to show that A inverse and C are commuting. A inverse dot C has to be shown to be equal to C dot A inverse. Okay, now this is where we will need this relation. We can write, in place of C we can write C inverse, and going to an elementary property of elements in a group, this is equal to C dot A whole inverse. We have already seen that we proved this elementary property in one of the lemmas, that if you take the inverse of a product, you take the product of their inverses but in the opposite order. Now C dot A is equal to A dot C, and now you run the calculation in the other direction. So note that C also commutes with A inverse. So we have taken care of the products AC, CA. They are equal. A inverse C, CA inverse. They are also equal. What else is left? We have to check that A and A inverse commute. But that is automatically true. We already know this. Okay. From the property of inverses, or rather from their definition itself, we have this. So any element always commutes with its inverse. So if it is this easy, we are not going to mention it. So for us now, every element commutes with every other element, and as such G is abelian. Hence G is abelian. Then we come to the most complicated part C. Let G be this group having 5 elements. Apart from the identity, we have 4 elements. Okay. Now here we are going to first of all claim something, and then we will prove that claim. Then using that claim we will go forward, and our claim is this. We claim that G square is not equal to the identity for every element G in G minus the identity element. So here we are claiming that if we take any non-identity element from this group, then its square is also not equal to the identity. And this claim will be proved by way of contradiction. We will assume that no, that is not the case. There is some element whose square is the identity, some non-identity element. Contrary to this, we suppose G minus E has an element whose square is the identity. Okay, so since we will be taking that element from G minus E, so that can be taken to be any of these 4 elements. So without loss of generality, we take that to be A. You can take anything, but let's just take A. Without loss of generality, we take A square to be equal to E. A is a non-identity element whose square is E. Now consider the sets H1 B dot A, H2 and H3 D comma B dot A. I think it is B dot A. Let me just see, I should not make mistakes. Is it B dot A? Yes. Okay. Okay, now suddenly we have considered 3 sets. Again, I am saying, if someone asks, how do you know that these things are to be claimed? The answer is, I did not know at the time I was starting this solution, but then after many trials, I came up with this idea. Okay, it's difficult to say how one comes up with a solution, but one just does usually. If he or she perseveres and does not abandon the solution, then eventually the solution comes to that person. Okay. So now you look at these sets. These sets, each one of them has 2 elements. How, you see, everything has to have a reason. If I assume B to be equal to B dot A, then by the cancellation law, by the left cancellation law, I will have E equal to A, which is not true. So that means B and B dot A are different. So H1 has 2 elements. Similarly, H2 and H3, each one of them also has 2 elements. Since H1, H2, H3, or let us just write like this, that doesn't sound right. Since each of H1, H2, H3 has two elements and G has 5 elements, H1, H2, H3 cannot be mutually disjoint. Why? You see, each one of them has 2 elements, so if they are mutually disjoint, if none of them intersects the others, then together they will give us 6 elements. And G, according to the fact that G is closed under its product, all of them have to be in G. So G cannot accommodate 6 elements because it has 5 elements. So that means these 3 cannot be mutually disjoint. There will be at least 2 of them which are intersecting. Without loss of generality, we assume H1 and H2 are not disjoint, their intersection is not the empty set. Okay, but let us also see, we keep on writing without loss of generality. Are we really not losing generality? Look at the sets, look at their structure of their elements. We have B, C and D. We know that A square is equal to E, but we don't know anything about B, C and D other than the fact that they are all different from the identity. So as far as the fact goes that they are elements, they have the same status and the structure of the sets also look the same. So we can assume without loss of generality that H1 and H2 are not disjoint. You will get what really means by this is that if instead of H1 and H2 you take H2 and H3, nothing essentially will change. You will ultimately get the same set of arguments or similar set of arguments similar to the ones that you will get now. Okay, so this we have assumed. Okay, so now that means what? Since B belongs to H1, okay, now H1 and H2 are not disjoint means they have a common element. That common element can be B or it can be B dot A also. So let us write like this. Assume B belongs to H2. B is already in H1. Now suppose it belongs to H2. Then B cannot be equal to C because B is different from C. So we are forced to conclude that B is equal to C dot A. Then B is equal to C dot A, and hence we can write like this also. That will be much better. If B belongs to H2, then B is equal to C dot A, and hence B dot A is equal to C dot A dot A, and by using associative law we get C dot A dot A, that is C dot A square, but A square is identity, so we have C dot identity is equal to C. So you see that if B is equal to C dot A, then C is equal to B dot A. If B is equal to C dot A, then C is equal to B dot A. That means H1 and H2 are equal. That is, H1 is equal to H2. Now we look at the other case. If the common element is instead of B, if we have it to be B dot A, if B dot A belongs to H2, if B dot A belongs to H2, then B dot A cannot be equal to C dot A, because then by the right cancellation law, cancelling A from both sides will give us B equal to C, which is not true. So we must have B dot A equal to C, and hence B dot A is equal to C. Now if we want C dot A, then we write C dot A and just like before we will have this to be equal to B. So in this case also you see that if B dot A belongs to H2, then let us see what we are getting is correct or not. B dot A is C, it has to be C, but then C dot A is B. So here also H1 and H2 are equal, that is H1 is equal to H2. So in any case, this assumption is letting us to the conclusion that H1 is equal to H2. Okay. Then, or this